Hi, and welcome to Goddess Storytime. This month, we are focusing on the African Yoruban goddess Oshun. And she is the goddess of the sweet waters, which is the flowing rivers. Different from Yamaya, who is the goddess of the salty waters of the oceans. So Oshun is such a delicious goddess to explore and play with. I love her so much. She's really one of the most playful, delicious stories that I like to share. And she is what I would call a sensual goddess, meaning that she's in the category with Aphrodite and Lakshmi and Hathor, these goddesses that are all about feminine sensuality, lovemaking, our sexual energy. And she is the Orisha, which is a word in the African Yoruban tradition that they use to talk about their deities. Instead of calling them gods or goddesses, they're the Orishas. And essentially, they are all of the different varieties of forms that the essential God energy, God goddess energy can take. And so she's an Orisha that governs beauty and playfulness and cosmetics and seduction and sensuality, sexuality, all of these delicious qualities of the feminine. And in the time that we have, I, want to keep it compressed or compact as far as not telling you all of her story. So I like to zero in on like one primary story that I feel like really expresses her her unique power. And that story that I'm going to share with you today is the story of how she saves the world with her magical honeypot by singing and dancing playfully and drizzling honey. She saves the world. And it's such a powerful, important story and myth. I think for us in the sort of modern Western world as women to become accompanied to, because I feel like it's actually the panacea in many ways for the shame and the guilt that we've been given around our own sensuality, sexuality, and seduction by the stories and the myths that our culture is based on. And so I'm super excited to share her story. Before I share her story, I'm going to share some pictures. I like for you to be able to see this gorgeous goddess that I'll be talking about, and so you can kind of imagine her. And so let me do a little screen share here. All right. So actually, let me make this even bigger. There we go. All right. So Oshun, she is the Yoruban African goddess of many of the things I already mentioned. Also, I didn't mention wealth, magnetism, sensuality, and yellow is her favorite color. So you will always be able to recognize Oshun because she will be draped from head to toe in beautiful gold and yellow fabrics. She likes to adorn herself in gold jewelry, and she is admiring herself in the mirror there. When we explore with Oshun, there is an awareness that we have around the power of our beauty, of our magnetism, of our seductive qualities. And so she's very self-aware and enjoys adorning her body and playing with makeup and jewelry. And here she also loves peacocks. You often see her with peacock feathers. Again, the gold jewelry, yellow, and you see the wealth here represented by these, this like cornucopia of gold coins. And another image where you see her in yellow, beautifully adorned with this mirror in her hand. And once again, here she is with her mirror and admiring her beauty. And there's also, mirror, mirror on the wall. there is a magic in mirrors too. She's very much connected to magic, and we're going to talk about that with her honey pot in a moment, which I find interesting. It's one of the most unique attributes of her, and it's not really ever shown in the images for some reason, which I find interesting. Um, but that she casts magical spells out of that. And the mirror, while in some ways it represents absolutely the awareness of our own beauty as a woman, it also, there's a lot of magic, beyond the looking glass. That takes place in a mirror. There are meditative practices that we can do that actually call in deities, like through staring at oneself in the mirror. And there's beautiful mirror practices. And so, as much as we can say that she's admiring her own beauty, we can also say that there can be this depth that's beyond that she's seeing through the mirror, that has to do with her qualities of magic and connection to the other realms. And then another beautiful image, once more, dressed in yellow, adorned in gold, with her mirror. She's looks here as if she's dancing, and there's beautiful. She's here in the rivers, in the sweet waters that she is the deity governing. And one more beautiful image. You see here a lot of, again, these same things: the yellow, the gold, the abundance, the river, the peacocks, all of these elements associated with her. And then I'll just also share here, I love this image from Beyonce, from, I believe, a Grammys performance, maybe about, I'm thinking 2018 is circa. I can't remember, don't hold me to that. But around that time, she did this performance where she's clearly evoking Oshun with the yellow, with the gold. And it looks like her costume designer almost like based the outfit off of this image of Oshun. And then I'll also share this. So we're going to talk about the honey in a moment, but I just wanted to show you, as long as we're on here, these images of, like, these things are like on Etsy. You can find, honey blessing, like spell bottles, or these honey jars that, that practitioners can use to cast spells, cast love spells. There's this magical quality. And I'm going to talk to you about my take on the honey as something, that kind of the symbolism of it, and the way that we connect to it as, like, yes, the literal honey, and also like an etheric, more subtle form of honey. So I'm going to bring us out of the images so I can tell you this story. So now that you've seen these images of Oshun and you can have some appreciation of what she looks like visually, I'm going to share with you a little story. So once upon a time, there is this god, or Orisha, named Ogun, and he is responsible for productivity. He's also connected to, like, metal making and forgery, meaning not like forgery as in faking something, but like forging in the fire, like making tools. And he essentially is the energy that keeps society moving forward and things functioning, things moving, like a sense of, in many ways, like the god of productivity, like the wheels of civilization and commerce and business and everything moving forward. And it is said that he gets into a funk. He goes off into the forest. He's depressed. He doesn't want to do his job anymore. And so everything shuts down. If he's not at the helm, making everything sort of move and the productivity move forward, everything shuts down. And so this is like a big thing. It's a problem. It's a big problem. It's kind of like nothing in the world is going to work properly now. And so all the Orishas come together and they're like, okay, we got to get him out of his funk. We got to get him back at his job and out of the forest. Got to figure out how to, fix this. And so each of the really powerful gods and Orishas and goddesses, they go out and they try their best, and none of them can succeed. He is in this funk. He's committed to sort of being in this space, and none of them can convince him otherwise. Now, Oshun is said to be the youngest, and one that maybe they don't exactly, maybe they don't properly respect the power of what she's responsible for, being feminine sensuality and beauty and all of these kind of fun, playful things. And she says, you know what, I think I've got this. And kind of like, really, I don't know, but we've tried everything else, let's let her go, have a try at this. And so she goes off into the forest, finds where he is, and nearby she finds a little clearing of trees, and she just begins to dance. And she's just doing her little dance in the forest, and she starts singing and dancing, kind of probably a little seductively, a little erotically and beautifully. And she's dipping her finger in her little honey pot, and she's singing a song about her honey and how magical her honey is. And Ogun hears this. He gets curious. He's like, well, let me just see what's going on over there. And so he kind of just shuffles through the forest, little looks through the trees. Ooh, he wants to get a little closer. So he keeps inching his way closer, and she's aware of this, and she keeps inching her way closer to him. And eventually she gets so close that she can dip her finger into her honey pot and then drizzle a little over his lips. And as she does this, and she's dancing and singing playfully the whole time, he begins to laugh. He can't help himself. He's overcome with joy and pleasure and the feeling of play, and he laughs and he starts to dance with her. And so they're doing a little dance and they're playing with the honey, and she just very slowly starts bringing him back into town and bringing him back into his role, to be in charge of the productivity, but very gently, very slowly, very playfully. And he agrees and he goes back to his role, and everything resumes. So the world has been saved. Oshun saves the world through her dance, through her play, and actually through her seduction, through the power of her seduction and this magical honey that she's drizzling around as she dances and sings. And it's such a simple story. At the same time, I think it's deeply profound if we as women, if you can imagine, if you've been told that as a little girl, if as a young woman or a little girl, you've been told, hey, you have this superpower that's needed, that's actually needed in the world. And the world's going to go way out of balance if you don't share that. And not only that, like it's this incredible gift that you give to the world, but it's also going to, it's a magical power that can draw things to you. What if you've been told that? What if that had been the kind of story you heard growing up? How would that make you feel about yourself? How would you have maybe shifted at those very tender ages the feelings you had about your body, about your playfulness, about your sexuality? And instead, we live in a culture that the primary story around women and seduction and sensuality is the story of Adam and Eve. Now, there I, I'm not there's so much beauty in the stories of the Bible, and there's so much wisdom and so much that I personally cherish from those teachings. And at the same time, we can't deny that that story, which is like the first story in the first few pages of that massive book, send a message. And it's a story that it's like underpinning, whether you're religious or not, it's actually underpinning our entire culture. It's running it's like a program that's running in the background for everybody that's living in the Judeo-Christian culture of the Western world that we live in. And what that story taught us is that female curiosity and the power of seduction is the worst possible thing. It's a punishable sin. and it caused the fall that, from, having to leave the Garden of Eden, kind of like the fall of man, and that women would be forever punished by pain in childbirth and these kinds of things. And there's so much in another goddess story time. We can talk about the snake and everything that's going down in that story. But just to say that no matter whether you're religious or not, that story is running in the background for everybody of like, ooh, like that's naughty, that part of me. And so this story is like the complete opposite. It's like, wait, the world is actually not going to function properly. Things are going to break down. We're going to be imbalanced if I'm not living in this. And guess what? We're living in a world that's pretty messed up and imbalanced. And this, among other things, is one of the things, the nectars, the juice that's needed to help bring us back into balance. You living in your sensuality, your playfulness, your innocent eroticism is actually a great gift for the world. It is something that when you walk into any space and you're in ownership of that and you're sharing it, it is like this honey. It is like this sweet nectar that's healing, revivifying, rejuvenating for anyone who gets to be in that space and receive it. And we as women can be the kind of the ambassadors for this energy and bring that into spaces where that imbalance is there. Because if we look at like what happened with Ogun, like why is he off in the funk in the forest? It's like nobody can be productive all of the time. It was like it's basically it's a story about burnout. It is the story of burnout, and so we can apply that to ourselves. So we can be that really playful, beautiful Oshun, like walking into a room or walking. Sorry, I keep doing this because I have this funny little hair there. But like walking into a space and like sensing where that energetic is in that contracted, overly yang space, too serious, too focused on productivity, and we can bring in the juice and we can bring in the pleasure, and we can use that to magnetize in so many ways in our life. But it's also a story about what's going on inside of us, because we have both of those. We've got our inner Ogun and our inner Oshun. And you know what? For most women, that Ogun is actually at the steering wheel more of the time, right? That's how we have been socialized. That's what we've been taught to value and be valued for, is productivity. How much are we getting done? What have we done? What do we have on our resume? It's how we're evaluated from a young age. And so we have emphasized that part of our psyche, that like if we want to look at these different deities and these different expressions, they're essentially different expressions of our own self, right? Of our own psyche, aspects of ourself, but certain of them have gotten rewarded. And that part of ourself most likely got rewarded when we were younger. So we have leaned into that more, and we forget how to shut it off. We weren't rewarded. We weren't taught stories about how special and wonderful our sensuality is, our playfulness is, our seductive qualities, our singing, our dancing, our magic. Those things were not rewarded. They were not celebrated. And so they kind of just get a little bit, what's the word? It's like they're just not getting the attention. So it kind of diminishes a little bit. So we need to be reminded, encouraged to bring that back out. And having a story like this helps to kind of bring that forward for ourselves. And so many women, this is one of the most common things that with my own clients that I work with, is this experience of burnout. I definitely have gone through cycles of that myself. And so it's recognizing when that's going on for us, when we get in that funk, because at a certain point, you're not going to be productive anymore. You keep going and going and going, but you're not being productive, that it's time to actually bring in the Oshun. And that can look like in your life, like pleasure breaks in your workday, dancing around, singing, having that. It's a big thing that I emphasize for all my clients as part of your morning practice, the way that you set your day, but also like weaving that in throughout your day, taking those breaks, like having beautiful flowers and stopping and literally stopping to smell the flowers in your day, putting on a little music, moving, anything that gets you connected to your senses, like an essential oil, being able to just take a moment and inhale that, bringing you into that place where you get to really experience the present moment through your senses and your sensuality, because that's what sensuality is. It's something that brings us into the present moment. And because of that, it's something that's sacred, right? It's when you see something really beautiful or you stop and you take something in that way through your senses, it's bringing you into this state of presence, which is a heightened state. And we could even say it's a sacred or spiritual state. It has the capacity to bring us to that place. And I want to just conclude with speaking for a moment. This hair is so bothering me, about the honey. And what does the honey represent? So it's something that's sweet, it's sticky. I mean, the honey pot just feels like a beautiful metaphor, for our own sexual juice and our sexual organs and like all of that nectar that's in there. And I would say in many ways it represents the Shakti, that there is this kind of etheric honey, and which is one of the ways I like to work with it. So I love honey, and I love literally working with honey. And when I teach this, we do things with like taking honey baths and honey showers and just all the different ways we can work with actual honey. And in another story time, we can talk at some point about the bees and the relationship with the bees and Aphrodite and the sensual goddesses and the honey. It's a whole beautiful piece to explore there. But there's also a way that we can just feel the honey as something that is energetic, that is etheric, that is this sweet nectar of the feminine that we're wielding all of the time. That is the Shakti itself. It's the feminine creative life force energy that when we're turned on and when we're letting that flow through our body, it's something that is palpable in our field. And my experience with that is that when I'm working with that in a really beautiful, conscious way, it is magic. It has the capacity to kind of weave spells into the space. And it's something that I can even send to someone and they can experience it and feel it. There is a way that we can start to move into working with the subtle energetics when we're really working with goddess energy and the feminine energy, and we start to move into that subtle space. And so I would love for you to take away from today's story time, just like really looking at where you have shamed your own powers of seduction, sensuality, playfulness, and start to bring them out a little more, giving yourself permission to play with like, hey, this is like a superpower that I can bring into a space, and have you start to just play with the idea that your sensuality, that your flirtatiousness, that your playfulness can actually be this healing nectar for spaces you move into. And then, like, next level, really see if you can feel the energetics of that. And so, if you watch some of my other videos, I share about the Shakti breathing, which is this breath that you breathe in through your sexual center. And you can begin to move it. You can take a little breath right now, just closing your eyes and inhaling and imagining that you're drawing in a breath. Like you can breathe in through your nose, but imagine you're drawing it in through your sexual center. A sweet, delicious dose of your feminine creative life force energy, and then exhale it out through the mouth, feeling the thickness of it, and then just start stirring your hips a little bit. And you can breathe and stir and let that become a kind of a dance, but really doing that breath where you're feeling this creative life force energy moving through you. And then you can even just sort of play with this idea that there's a honey there, that this energetic honey is this sweet, delicious thing that you can just sort of rub gently, caress over your body. and feel yourself really bathing in the nectar of your own feminine, creative, life force, vitality, and sensuality. All right, there's so much more to share about her and the honey, the bees, more of her stories around the magic. But I feel like that's a really good, delicious dose for you to take today and enjoy it. Play with your sensuality. And remember, it's something that's honestly so innocent in its essence. And then as a woman, you can also use it consciously. But when we're moving it up, like through our whole being and through our heart, it is a gift. It's not a manipulation. It's not seduction as trying to just manipulate people to get what you want. It's seduction for this higher cause, for the sacredness of all humanity. So there you are. Oshun.